Casting with Ceri Jones.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. This week's guest, I had the privilege to travel down to meet him at his home in Surrey to record our chat. He is a passionate and proud Scotsman and has been a professional actor spanning 60 years, and as well as an extensive television career. He has appeared in over 130 Hollywood movies and also been awarded an MBE. He has a love of fishing, especially for trout, so whenever he has a chance, he prefers nothing better than to cast a fly on a river. We also chat about his new venture, Storyman, his own blend of whisky. Welcome to my chat with James Cosmo. Well, it's lovely to meet up again, James.
Great to see you, Ceri.
Thanks for inviting me to your lovely home. How long have you been here?
Annie and I and the kids have been here for about 18 years now. It's only about 20 years old because we bought it when it was 2 years old. But it's all green oak, and as you see, it's upside down. The living room is upstairs to take advantage of the pitch roof, and instead of slate, we've got glass panels up there which let in loads of light, which is good. But I just love when we saw it. We used to live in Twickenham, but when we saw this, we just sort of fell in love with it. And I just love that. I don't think I've ever seen a nail in this house. It's all pegs. And, you know, when the weather changes drastically, you can sometimes hear it creak and things.
That's nice.
And it's the wood, you know, is it green oak, and it splits along the stress lines. It's meant to, you know, and it just gets tighter and tighter. And harder. Now you can't bang a nail into it, you know, it's just ridiculous. No. But I remember I was doing a Midsummer Murders at this old country house, and I looked and I saw the same joint being used in that, and that house was about 800 years old, you know. So you think, these houses will just last forever.
They do. Look at the pegs coming out of it.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
I bet you couldn't believe when this came up on the market.
Well, it was Annie, my wife, that saw it. And I was perfectly happy where we stayed, you know. She said, "You've got to come and see this house." And we walked in and had a walk round, and I said to the lady, "Shake my hand on this." Yeah. And that was it, you know. But it worked out very well.
You just don't expect it. Come round that corner.
I know.
And you got these modern houses. And right at the end, it almost looks like a castle from the end of the street there, doesn't it?
It was nice at Christmas when it was all lit up. You know?
Bet.
It was
you
great.
Can't beat oak and traditional buildings.
No, I love it. I love it, yeah. And it has a lovely warm feeling to it, you know. It's not like a modern house that's sort of, you know, pristine and things. It's got cobwebs and characters and, you know, I just love that. Lots of spiders sometimes in the summer.
This suits you. This definitely is your character. You know, sometimes you can look at a house and expect somebody like that to live in it.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, maybe we were made for each other.
And I love the fireplace too.
Yeah. There's nothing like a wooden house and a wood-fired stove. It's lovely.
And do you know what you mentioned? You used to live in Twickenham. It's a sore point at the moment for me.
Of course, yes.
After Saturday.
Yeah.
And to lose at the end, as we did.
Yeah.
And to be honest, and it's because of that, and the loss against Scotland, which was incredible, that game. Talking about a game of two halves.
Yeah.
I think that's where my voice is still a bit sore after 2 days.
Unbelievable.
Consecutive weekends. Do you follow rugby?
The big games, yeah. But I don't, you know, there's Harlequins down the road at Twickenham, but no, not really, you know.
Do you go back to Scotland much?
I go back, it's usually for work, Ceri, you know, although I sort of play all sorts of nationalities and people and things. Quite often stuff comes up and the filmings in Scotland. You know, I did a series called 6-4 that's coming out on BBC very soon. And I was up in Scotland for about 6 months, off and on,
right.
shooting that. You know.
Was it initially your work which brought you down south then?
Yeah, yeah. When you're a young actor, you have to make that decision if you're going to stay at home and make a career there, or go to the big smoke and try and make a bigger career. Because this is where a lot of the work is made, you know, and Los Angeles, you know, and I've spent a long time over there as well. So you, as a young actor, I just felt you had to be in the mix down here, you know.
I remember the first time we chatted many years ago now, you mentioned about Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And isn't there a season where you go to get...
Yeah, pilot season. It's sort of faded now. Things have sort of moved on from there, but there was like 2 months at the end of January through to middle of March, maybe, where they made all these pilot shows, you know, and maybe 1 out of 10 would be made into a series, but all the actors flooded to LA for that pilot season, you know, to try and pick up a series. But now with Netflix and Amazon and all the other platforms, it's changed a lot now.
Do you still go back to Los Angeles then?
No.
No need, I guess.
Well, yeah. I'm planning a trip out to Washington State to fish for steelhead, to visit my old friend Bo Bochin, who's 84 now, and he's a sort of he's got a jet boat, you know, one of these flat things, and he goes out and he trawls for 5 different kinds of salmon on the river, you know, and he catches these enormous things, but he just trails plugs and all that sort of stuff, but they get enormous catches of fish, and he lives on them, you know. He smokes the fish, he cans it. He and his wife Peg, that's about all they eat, you know. And he used to have a ticket for elk every year, and he'd maybe try to get an elk, and that helped him as well. But it was a great way to live, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I'm going out there, but I wouldn't go back to Los Angeles. No, I didn't like Los Angeles. Yeah, I'll be going out to visit my friends out there.
Saying, that's all they would eat almost is fish. I remember there was a guy used to fish a local lake near me, and he had a black lab. That's all he fed it on was trout.
Really?
You should have seen his coat.
I know.
Shine, you wouldn't believe.
I had the same thing. There was a friend of mine, Mickey Morris, he was a stalker. He was from, where do they make the shoes? Northampton. But he was a plumber or something. But anyway, he became a stalker up in the Highlands, near the coast, up in the northwest. And he used to go down and get the mackerel that came off the boat. And he had these Chesapeake Bay retrievers, and the same thing.
Yeah.
But if you showed them a fish, they'd just start to drool. And he just used to, didn't gut the fish or anything. He just used to drop the mackerel straight down their throat.
Really?
And again, their coat was absolutely magnificent, you know.
Amazing. Well, you've been a successful and very busy actor over your career. And from what I can see, you've done, is it in excess of 130
Yeah, somebody
Hollywood
said that a
movies?
couple of days ago, yeah.
Yeah, spanning 60 years.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
How did it all start for you, the acting career then?
Well, my father was in the business. He was an actor. And not that he could help me very much, but because he was looking for work at the same, you know, as well. But the advantage it did give me was that I went into it with my eyes open. I knew it wasn't going to be glamorous or whatever, because I'd seen my father, you know, with his head in his hands, worrying about the tax man, or I didn't get that job, and all, you know. So I knew it wasn't going to be an easy road. Didn't expect it to be.
Yeah.
But it's what I wanted to do, and so I just went for it. Yeah.
It's like feast or famine, I guess, isn't it?
It can be. I mean, there's, you know, as the old thing, you know, 90% of actors are out of work at any given time.
He was called James as well, wasn't he? Copeland.
He was. That's right. Yeah.
So did you train then How did you come
Can you
across-
not tell? No, I didn't train.
Really?
No.
Wow.
I think I'm in two minds about it. I think if people go to drama college, if they're keen on the classics, there are teachers there that you can take you through it and give you so much information and advice and break down plays and all that sort of thing. But also you have to have an innate talent.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, you could study for 20 years and you'd still be no good at it. I'm not saying that I'm good at it, but I've been getting away with it for a while, so I didn't want to go to college. I just thought, no, I'm going to crack on and do it.
So what was your first job?
It was
First paid job then?
Dr. Finley's casebook.
Really?
Aye, with the original one with Bill Simpson and Andrew Cruikshank. Yeah. So I'd met, she was a lady called Prudence Fitzgerald, and she was directing Dr. Finley, and we met in a pub, and she said, I've got a part that you could play, and I went, let's go. And that was it, And then not long after that, I got a part in the Battle of Britain, which was, fantastic. Yeah.
So you originally from Dumbarton, am I right?
I was born in Dumbarton, but I was raised in Clydebank.
Like, I know both very well. 'Cause
Do you?
As a child, we used to go on holidays to Scotland. We used to stay in Alexandria,
Good God.
just outside Dumbarton.
Yeah.
And we used to stay, we had an aunt on the Isle of Mull. But anyway, on Alexandria, which is right next to Dumbarton, isn't it? And the funny thing is, I went it was about 4 years ago, just before lockdown, up there, because like the first time we met was on set in Caerphilly Castle,
Yeah.
while I was doing some SA work at the time. Now, I've done a few bits since then, and I got bigger parts. But back just before lockdown, I joined an agency called Beautiful Bearded Bastards. You probably haven't heard of them.
No,
They
I should be in with them.
They're from Scotland, and it was one of those things I just signed.
Yeah.
Minutes later, he's saying, "We got a job for you." It's a headmaster for a BBC production in Dumbarton.
Away. Oh, would that be River City?
What the
Yeah, the production.
No,
Because I think they shoot that in Dumbarton.
I can't remember the name of the production. I should have I didn't even watch it after actually, but I went up. They flew me out to Edinburgh, quite grand, It was they flew me to Edinburgh, a taxi from Edinburgh to Dumbarton and a hotel and whatever. But to be honest, that's the last time for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't for me. I like doing small bits, but this 5 days before, they emailed across the script my lines.
Yeah.
And 5 days were hell. For me, I got to read something 100 times before it sinks in.
Yeah.
And when I went, it was great. Everything went smooth.
Yeah.
But as it happened, they wanted it. That programme was filmed in Welsh and English.
Oh, really?
Strange going up to Scotland.
Yeah,
But they
yeah.
put a bid in for BBC, whatever. to do
Right.
it. So it wasn't for me anyway. I think there must be a natural talent to remember lines. Do you find that? Do you find it easier?
Touch wood, I've found it usually not too bad. My father was astonishing. He could quote just about everything Robert Burns ever wrote. And he could read a book and remember just about every single bit of it. It was amazing. So I got a wee bit of that, but not a hundredth of what he could.
Yeah. It's nice to be recognised as well, because you've got an MBE as well, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh, it's for services to fly fishing. No, it wasn't. It was for services to act.
That's to come, probably. After this podcast.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, it just came out of the blue. I've no idea. I don't know how these things work, But my agent sort of sent me a letter. She was so excited, and I was like, "What the hell's?" And I looked, and you've from the cabinet office and all that, But it was very nice, Like I guess it's like just being recognised for not knocking over the furniture for 60 years.
There's many films I know I've watched you and seen you in, and if I named all the others which I've looked into, it would take an hour just to go through them. But there's a couple of ones which, the very first thing that stands in my mind, which I relate you to, is Braveheart.
Uh-huh.
That was some experience for you to do that film, was it?
Oh, it certainly was. Yeah, it was amazing, amazing, and it was the last film that didn't have CGI. It had a tiny wee bit.
Campbell you were, wasn't it? Was it Campbell?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we really did have 3,500 extras.
Really?
Yeah, like 200 horses. It was big. You felt it was huge, you know, and you knew it was going to be. Well, it was a big epic, you know, and
Yeah,
but
it was.
we never realised how successful it would be. I think it was 6 Oscars or something. I think I'm still waiting on mine, but it's probably in the post. Yeah, it was a tremendous experience to be in such a huge film.
And then you were in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, yeah. That was. I loved the character in Game of Thrones, you know, Lord Commander Mormont, because he was, you know, in amongst all. I've never watched Game of Thrones, but I believe there's, you know, all the violence and sex and intrigue and all that. Lord Mormont's the only one that keeps his clothes on and behaves properly, you know, and he's taken a vow of celibacy.
Yeah.
But I loved Mormont as a character. He seemed a very dedicated and honourable man.
He was saying about being an honourable man. You were actually a minister as well in Whisky Galore.
Oh yes, yeah.
What was that like? Because that was to do with, obviously, whiskey, which is something which
Yeah.
we're going to come to later.
Yeah, I am two minds about that film because the original Whisky Galore was filmed many, many years before that. And I always remember these wonderful faces of these old islanders, you know, the essays that they used, who were actually islanders, you know, wonderful weather-beaten faces and things. And I felt the modern Whisky Galore didn't have that, you know, and it didn't have the warmth that the original had.
Yeah. And the other thing, there's two others I got you on my list now. There was one I didn't realise you were going to be in it when I was watching it this one Christmas time. That was Narnia. You were Father Christmas.
Yeah. And strangely enough, they flew me to New Zealand for a month, 3 weeks out there.
Tell me you took your fly rod.
No, I didn't have a chance. But I had been out to New Zealand many years before on a 6-part serial called The Mackenzie Affair. And I did take my fly rod. And we travelled like it was about a real character called James Mackenzie, he was a shepherd. And he discovered the Mackenzie Pass through the Southern Alps. And amazing character. And I was playing Mackenzie. And we travelled like a travelling circus all the way through the South Island, you know. And I remember the first time I went fishing, went out there, and I just brought my rod. I suppose it was like I put on what I usually like a 3 pound, 4 pound breaking strain tippet, you know. Cast it, and this thing went bang like that, and it was gone.
No.
And I thought, I need something bigger than this.
Terrible that happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I've never been to New Zealand. It's somewhere which it's on my bucket list. But the one thing, I go many places on my bucket list, but there's one place I go to religiously. It's almost like my second home, and that's Ireland.
Yeah.
Now, your latest film, My Sailor, My Love, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was filmed in Achill, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
What do you think of Achill?
When I went out there, I went, because I've filmed in Ireland a fair bit, and I love it over there. It's wonderful people. I'll tell you a funny story. I was going to drive over, because you need a car in Achill, you know, like there's hardly any public transport. So I thought, I'm going to take my car, and I was there for 6 weeks. And so they'd got me a lovely cottage that overlooked the sea, and it was just there was a field and then the sea. It was gorgeous, 2 minutes away from the location. So my wife Annie, she sorted out. It was during COVID, and we had all these papers and everything else. So I'd drive up to Holyhead, and Annie's got a folder of all the papers and things to get over there, and got on the ferry, and I arrive in Dublin, and the cars are getting stopped and checked and all that, and come out, and this customs or immigration or customs guy comes out, and he looks through the window of my car and goes, "Hello, James, how are you?" He said, "What you doing over here?" And I said, "Well, I'm making a film." He said, "Where's that now?" And I said, "Achill." And he went, "Oh, James, man." He said, "You love Achill." He said, "They're lovely people. And the food, oh, James. Well, James, you have a wonderful time. See you later." Like that. Yeah. Didn't look at any papers or anything.
No.
That was straight through. No. But
I guess you don't need papers. You only got your face.
Well, I guess that was it. But it was lovely because the little cottage I had, it did have a TV, but I never switched it on. And it was so quiet. And it had a big picture, big patio doors that you could look out onto the sea. And I would sit there for hours sometimes, just looking at the sea in the silence. It was glorious. And I felt myself after a couple of days really getting calm, and a sort of serenity came over me, and the people were astonishingly kind. I mean, ridiculous. I mean, I was there for a week, and there was a knock at the door. The nearest house was about half a mile away. There was a knock at the door, and it was a lady with a cake for me. She just said, "Welcome to Achill, James. Here you are." Beautiful.
I think the West generally are like that, especially.
Yeah.
I love it there.
Yeah.
Mayo, Galway. I went there in 2012 for 2 weeks, and I stayed for 2.5 years. It's a hard place to leave.
Yeah.
But I'm back and forth all the time.
Oh, the warmth of the people. The only thing is I didn't take a spinning rod because I'm sure there was lots of mackerel and bass out there.
That's only just come out. Was it last year? Was it came out?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah. I haven't actually seen it yet. I've seen the trailer. That's one thing I'm going to do is when I go back to take a look at that.
Well, let me know. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, the trailer's fantastic. The filming, it's incredible.
Yeah, it was directed by a Finnish director called Klaus Harrow, and he brought over his own cinematographer and his crew and things. So, and they were very, very meticulous about everything, as you would imagine, sort of Finnish people. Very precise, very Scandinavian.
Yeah. The movies these days have come on leaps and bounds, and it's that cinematic look to it. It's all to do with colour grading, the mood.
Yeah.
It's a proper art. And you were saying, I can relate to what you were saying, you were there for a couple of days and you felt so calm. I spend a lot of time on my boat on the Corrib, and when I leave here, I go over, I'll have 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and it's only after the third day your metabolism changes. Yeah, that's all you're thinking of is fishing to start with. Yeah. You're in the boat.
Have you got your own boat on the boat? Do you take it over with you?
No, it's
there.
Yeah, it's on the shore of the Corrib.
Yeah.
And I've had it for many years now. And it's just, as soon as you get out there, you're leaving the world behind you.
Yeah.
And everything slows down.
Yeah.
And it's the reverse then. After I've been there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks or more, I come back, it takes me a few days to get back into it, isn't it?
It's a bit of a shock, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, the pace of life and the attitude of people.
We'll move on into the fishing now shortly. What is your favourite part or role you've played?
I think in general it might actually be my Sail of My Love, because it was, it wasn't a big budget film. It was a reasonable budget, but certainly not big. But my fellow actors and the crew, they were a mixture of Finnish and Irish, and it was a wonderful mix. Breed Brennan that played opposite me and Catherine Walker that played my daughter. We got on ever so well together, and it was seamless, and it was just so nice to work with them. It wasn't stressful. it was considered, and Klaus was very calm and quiet, and it was a joyful thing to do. Yeah.
When you get these parts, do you actually pitch them, apply for them, or do they think, are you contacted? We'd like you to...
Nowadays, they usually go through my agent and say, "Does James want to do this?" You know?
All right. That's nice to be asked, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
What's your next job?
I'm doing a film called Salvable, which is a film about the world of boxing and professional boxing, which is going to be filmed in South Wales at an old gym that the producers have found. And then I'm doing some stuff for Netflix, a political thriller, and Amazon. I'm doing a sort of psychological show. So I've got sort of the spring and summer are sort of tied up now.
Well, if you're in Wales and you've got a spare day while you're filming,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
we'll have a day somewhere. So going on to the fishing then,
yeah.
how did it all start for you? When did you first pick up a rod then?
Well, funny you saying that you were up in Alexandria, Ceri, because my dad, before he was an actor, he'd lots of jobs. He was a policeman for a while in Dumbarton, and then he was he started off. It's a very, very sad story because he was a very, very bright man, but his mother, who was an old bitch, made him go and work in a shoe factory when he was 14, which sort of hurt him quite a lot. But anyway, he worked there and became a policeman. And then he became a water bailiff on the Lough Corrib system.
All right.
You know, the Endrick, the Leven, all that. And he did that for 2 or 3 years, and he would walk into Glasgow to go to the Royal College of Drama evening class. He would walk from Dumbarton to Glasgow.
Walk?
Walk, and then do a class, and then walk home again.
How far is that?
Oh, it's about 15 miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
He'd be proud of you then.
Yeah, and then so I've got a vague memory of, because when my father was a bailiff, they used to net Lough Lomond for the pike because they predated a lot on the salmon, you know, or the par anyway. And my father said they'd have these, the floats out, and it's, if there was one down, you knew, there's something there, you know.
Yeah.
And he said sometimes 3 or 4 of them would be down, and they'd think, "Oh God, that's a body," you know. And often it was, you know. But I remember, because the pike, they just got rid of them, you know. And I remember my father had brought home a pike for us to eat. And as you know, pike are very sort of, they cling on quite a lot. And this thing wasn't dead.
Oh.
And my mother was sort of having a fight with it in the sink.
Is it alive?
I think it traumatised me. That's why I remember it. But so
Wow.
I was sort of, my father, when I was a wee boy, talking about the river, and he was actually offered the job because there was a very famous poacher in Dumbarton called Shade McKinnon, who was sort of notorious or famous in the town. He was an amazing salmon poacher, and he could shoot a net in the middle of the night, and nobody ever caught him. But Shade McKinnon was known to the bailiffs, and there was the head bailiff, Whammond, his name was, and Shade said, "You should try that young lad Copeland. He's a good boy. He knows the river." So the poacher got my dad the job as a bailiff.
Oh.
So my dad used to tell me all the stories about Lough Lomond and the Leven, and then when I was about 13, I suppose, I met a pal of mine. Well, became friends with a young guy called Eddie Dunk, and we used to fish the Leven, which runs through Dumbarton.
Yeah.
Just it was called the Slaughterhouse Pool, where we were. It was this old defunct slaughterhouse, but we used to fish maggots on a bubble float, you know, on a fly line, on a fly rod, and a spinning reel, and just float it down and bang away at the wee finnock, you know, which were, you know, it was amazing fishing in those days. And that's where I sort of fell in love with it completely. I was utterly besotted by it. And then Eddie and I moved on to fly fishing up by Crean-Larich and fish all through there.
Yeah.
It was wonderful fishing for, you know, not big fish, you know, 3/4 pound brownies, but it was terrific fun.
You were saying the River Leven. I used to fish it often then.
Did you? Yeah.
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 When I was teenage, like 12 and 15, we used to go up every year to visit family. And it was walking distance from where my aunt was living.
Yeah.
And I never had much success. I didn't really know what I was doing on a river then. But there were guys there catching 15-pound salmon practically every time I was there.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like now,
I
but it was incredible.
wouldn't think it'd be anything like that now, can you?
And then I would walk then to a place called Balloch.
Yeah.
And there was an area, I think it was linked to the Lough Lomond. It was called the Sand Pits. And they were pike in there, and we had a few.
Yeah.
And never been in love with a pike, but in the early days,
What, to eat or to catch?
both really.
Both, right.
No, they don't do it for me.
No.
But it's very popular now. People fly fish with them, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I caught it was like I can't remember. I was with this German guy. I used to have a pint with this German guy. He worked at the Kelvin Grove Museum in Glasgow. Dietrich Burkel, his name was. Very high up in the paleontology department. But he was a mad fisherman. And we went out and onto Lough Lomond, just fishing from the shore. And I didn't know anything about pike fishing. And I think it was like a herring or something he wrapped in these hooks, launched it out there. And I was reeling it in. I thought, oh, I'm snagged up in weed or whatever. You know, it was this huge bloody pike.
Oh, was it?
But it was like pulling in a bag of coal, you know.
Yeah.
It was very unexciting.
So you fly fish, that's where your fly fishing started then?
Yeah, on the Leven, yeah. And then up at the River Fillen, all round that, all those little tributaries up there. Yeah.
So when did you leave then?
I started as an actor when I was 17.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I was back and forth, up and down from London to Scotland, back up to see my folks and all that sort of thing.
I guess with all your work, you do a lot of travelling. Do you actually get much time? We spoke briefly about this earlier, to fish, because I guess if you're somewhere like for 5-6 weeks, you don't really have days off, do you?
Not really, you know, and if you, because, you know, very often it's a 6-day week, and the hours are sort of long, you know, especially as an actor, because you've got to be up there first and for makeup and costume and all that. So you're getting up, you know, maybe 6, round about then, and then you're working all day till 7 o'clock at night. You're knackered at the end of the day. Not physically usually, but sort of mentally you're a bit, and then you get one day off, you know, so all you want to do really is just lie in bed, you know. So it's unusual if you do get some time off, you know.
If you're enjoying this podcast, consider becoming a Patreon. You get weekly podcasts from the biggest names in the sport, access to over 165 episodes, behind-the-scenes photography, and other exclusive content. From just £5 a month. To tune in, visit patreon.com/Casting with Kerry Jones, or see the link on my website, castingwithkerryjones.com. Have you come across any other actors in the industry who fish?
There's one Scottish actor called Michael Nardoni, who's a very keen fly fisherman. Paul Young. Obviously, he started as an actor and then sort of became a fishing television programme guy. He's an awfully nice chap. There's a few actors, and of course, famously, Michael Hordern was a great fly fisherman, you know.
Was he?
Yeah, huge fly fisherman.
Do you know what? I'll mention this now. The first time we actually met, because it was quite ironic, actually. I was working on...
And Michael Nardoni was in that show.
What show?
He played the show that we met on, Merlin, yeah.
Oh, did he?
He played my second in command. Would you believe that? Isn't that funny?
Wow.
Yeah.
But I remember that day, we were in the castle, Caerphilly Castle.
Yeah.
and I was just at the background, chainmail. I love the gear they put you
Yeah.
on, you know. And then you had on the main parts. Then you had some sort of warlords, and you had these big skins.
Yeah.
And then you have your own caravans, and there's us to one side of the car park, and then there's the actors then. And I had to pass yours, and I didn't realise it was yours until I seen you step outside and sit down on the step of the caravan, your own caravan, wearing all these skins. Looks like a really mean-looking warlord with like a paper bowl of cornflakes, right? And I can't remember what I said. I just happened to look down and said something. And you looked up and you said, "I'd rather be fishing." And that was it then. And that's how we came about.
There you go.
And often then, since then, I've thought, if I ever have a caravan, I'd have to, because it's a long time waiting, isn't it?
Oh,
Sometimes.
yeah.
I would have thought the time flies.
Yeah. Well, I have.
Yeah.
I have indeed. And it was funny because, oh God, it was just sitting over there. When I was doing Jack Ryan, it was right in the middle of lockdown. And I knew I was going to be in Budapest for about 6 months and probably no break, really. So I thought, oh God, I'm going to be stuck in a hotel. I'll get myself all, because I've always admired fly tying and things. I said, I'm going to just set up my YouTube. I've got all the stuff. I'm going to tie flies. And of course, I never did, because you're constantly thinking about what you're doing the next day, work, you know. And it's a shame. But I did, my friend Stuart Tanner, who's a fly fishing guide, he's a wonderful fly tyer. And he comes up every now and then, and we sit together.
Oh, right.
He's the most remarkable man, Ceri. He's Stuart's about 50, maybe 50 odd, but he was in a wheelchair till he was 13. He had childhood. I don't know if it was arthritis but all his joints were buggered. You know, like knees replaced, and just as a kid. But his mum tied flies, and she taught him to tie flies. And then even when he was in a wheelchair, when he was like 13, he was giving casting lessons to adults on how to cast a fly. He's a superb fly fisherman, and he ties fly, and he's got the fingers on his hands stop at the first knuckle. They're that long on both hands, and that's sort of like this. And just using these wee stumps,
Really?
he can tie a fly. He puts it in his mouth. Just, in 2 minutes you go, dear heavens, that's amazing. You know, it's wonderful. It's wonderful how people have talents and abilities that just aren't recognised. You know, I've got a degree of talent or ability to be an actor. You know, and you know, you get people saying, "Oh, that's fabulous," and "You were wonderful." Oh, that nonsense. You know, but there's so many people around that have got amazing talents that nobody knows about.
There's some incredible fly tyers out there now.
Yeah.
And there's two types of fly tyers. You tie for show or tie for throw.
Yeah.
Basically. And I'm sort of the type to throw, but as long as I catch fish, I'm happy with, you know. I think there's some really amazing, talented fly tyers out there.
You know, I was saying earlier, before we started the podcast, I'm hoping to go to Washington State this year to fish for steelhead on the Deschutes River system. And my friend Bo Bochin that I stay with, old Bo, but he invited this guy that used to own the Tootle River Fly Shop. And it was the Tootle River was a lovely wee river. But then Mount Rainier had the volcano, and if you remember way back, and it just washed out the whole of the Tootle River, just gone. This mud and ash and everything, just incredible. But this guy had owned the Tootle River Fly Shop, and I've still got a skip cap that he gave me with Tootle River on it. But Bo invited this guy, I can't remember his name, but he invited him to dinner. So we were just, as fishermen, we could just sit and talk about stuff, you know. And this guy very kindly brought me a little box, a little plastic box with flies in the front, and then you turn it over and there's more flies. Beautiful flies, absolutely gorgeous. And he said, I want to give you this as a present. So I said, that's wonderful. And he said, but there's a story behind this. And he said, the guy that tied these, he said, when he was about, I don't know, late teens or early 20s or whatever, a country boy, he got into a fight or whatever in a bar, and he shot this guy, killed him stone dead. And he got a life sentence. Boom. In the jail. Now, he took up fly tying, and over the years he got better and better and better. And this guy said, I used to buy all the flies from him because people were saying, these are fantastic, they're really good. And this poor man had nothing else to do but tie flies and invent patterns and everything else. Anyway, he came up, he was in his 40s or whatever, came up for parole. And the guy that owned the fishing shop said to him, he said, you'll never tie another fly when you leave the prison if you get parole. And the guy said, you know what? He said, I've been tying flies for over 20 years. He said, it's all I can do. I've just got to tie flies. I said, wow, what happened? And he said, he got parole. He discovered women and drink, and he never tied another fly again.
No.
So these are really rare.
You got those?
I still have,
Wow,
yes.
that's a good story.
Oh, I never used any of them, no.
It's nice. I like that myself, actually. I get flies given over the years. And I either put them in a frame or just keep them, but I never use them. I was given a selection of flies there's a guy called John Graham. Mm-hmm. I did 2 podcasts with him back last year. You have to listen to these. He's the sea trout legend. There's no one better. Sadly, he died then last year. But listen to him talking. It's just gold, because all the knowledge he had for sea trout. Yeah. But he gave me a selection of flies, about 25 flies, all his flies. He said, you've got to use this, and I won't use them.
No.
They were the framer now. I'm having them in a frame
of course,
now.
yeah.
Something like that is really nice,
Yeah.
But going on to sea trout, when we actually fished last was on the Towie, quite a few years ago now. Have we done any sea trout fishing since?
I don't think I have. I think it must have been such a traumatic experience trying to catch sea trout in the dark.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
Jamie was with us, wasn't he? Jamie Harris.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that him? Yeah.
And there's a lodge there. I don't know if he went into the lodge that time. There's a lodge there. It's the Abercrombie Estate. And there's a photograph of you up in the lodge.
Is there?
With Jamie, yeah. And he's got one at home. I met him the other day. And he often asks.
Oh, how
if I
nice. We'll
see
give
him.
him my best.
Yeah, and we will. Anytime you want to come over, he said, just give us a shout. I'll put you on the fish.
I'm sort of swithering just now. Like every fisherman, I am a sucker for equipment.
Yeah.
I think it's going to make me a better fly fisherman. You know that thing?
Yeah.
And I remember being in America and I bought a Sage ZX or whatever, 9.5 foot fly rod. Cost me an absolute fortune. And then I bought a Winston
Nice gear.
15-foot rod. And when I lived in Los Angeles, there was, I don't like Los Angeles. It's a horrible place. I just don't like it. It's full of phonies and, time wasters. But I used to live in between Los Angeles and just down the road, Long Beach. Used to live in this place called Torrance. It was full of Spanish people, which I quite like, Mexican people, which I quite like because they're nice folk, sort of blue collar, ordinary working people, So I felt more at home there. But I used to go down, and there was I forget how I found out about it, but it was the Long Beach Casting Club, and it was in a municipal park, and they had this great big pond. It was what would it be? It would be the size of about 10 tennis courts. It was big, but it was only a foot deep.
Yeah.
And it had been built in like 1929 or something, the clubhouse. And it was like going into an old Hollywood movie.
Wow.
It was all wood and leather armchairs and frames of flies made by members and things. And I remember I used to go down there like 3 times a week. And you just go and you just practice casting, you know, spey casting, obviously, you know. But it was just terrific fun, you know, because you could really get your eye in and get the rods working.
Nice.
And that sort of saved my life. And there was an old guy there that he said, I can't remember his name, but he said, "Oh, James," he said, I've got a rod coming from Scotland. It's called a Cairn." And I hadn't heard of it, you know. And it was the Cairn Rod Company. They're still around, but they don't make the rods anymore. But I've been in contact with the lady whose late husband owned a beat on the Cairn, and they also produced very fine fly lines that are still terrific, and some very good rods.
I think I've heard the name.
Yeah. Well, this old guy, he bought, I think the first one was 12 foot, and then he sent away a 14-foot one, then a 16-foot, then an 18-foot one. But they were like rods. They were carbon fibre, obviously, but they had the same action as I would think a Greenheart was, you know?
Right, yeah.
Because, and you had to, you know, because the Americans are modern rods, they're so stiff and, you know, like all tippy.
Yeah.
And just ping, out they go with a really narrow loop and all that
Fast
sort of thing.
action. Yeah.
But these Cairn rods, you had to, like, you know, start bringing it in, stop, have a fag, say hello to people, and then start your forker. But you could feel the
There's a soul to it, isn't it?
Yeah, Peter Anderson, the great fly fisherman, said that you should feel the action of the rod in your hands. It went right down. He said it should almost be opposite, like all the weight is up there, you know. And when you got it right, I mean, it was purely a timing thing, but when you got it right and you cast your forward cast like that, you could feel the rod go whoa, 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 and the line just flew. But I think you would have to.
Did you have one of those rods?
No, I didn't. No.
Oh,
In
right.
fact, I contacted the lady whose late husband owned it, and she said that sadly they're out of business now, and it gave me a lovely invitation. If I was ever up there, the family still had some rods that I could borrow to go fishing. But she said that Bruce and Walker, they employed they gave the contract to Bruce and Walker to manufacture the Cairn rods. So I suppose you could get the blanks from somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
But nowadays with different lines, Scandi lines and all that sort of stuff, you know.
It's very technical now, isn't it?
It is, it is. And I've been thinking, what brought me on to that subject was, I've been thinking very much, like when you mentioned sea trout, you know, I'm thinking, you know, maybe an 11-foot switch rod, you know, with a Scandi line on it.
I think most of the people I know, for the sea trout, it's just your standard 10-foot,
Yeah.
maybe 11, but it all depends what river you're in as well,
Yeah,
the size of the river.
Yeah.
Like the rivers around us, they're not big rivers, really,
Yeah.
South Wales.
Yeah.
Bigger rivers, yeah, like a lot of the ones in Scotland, the Scandi line probably,
Yeah.
and a larger rod. But
But, you know, like a 11-foot maybe, you know, even in a normal sized river, I mean, like you can get it right down there, you know, you're not splashing about in front of the fish, you know.
yeah. They were saying about the rods which aren't made anymore. There's a firm, Sharps.
Oh, yeah.
Aberdeen, yeah.
I had a sharp Scotty once.
Did you?
Yeah. I had a lot of cane rods at one time.
Really?
Yeah.
The nice cane rods. I did have a couple, and I kept them on display, I did.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I had offers I couldn't refuse one day, so I thought, okay.
Yeah.
I wish I never did, actually, because they
Yeah.
do look the part.
Oh, the sharp Scotty was a great wee fly rod.
But there's a rod, if I see one now, I would have it second hand. They stopped making it, and Sharps brought out, probably about 12, 15 years ago now, it was called the Sharps Gordon.
Uh-huh.
And
Trout rod.
trout rod, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they did a range, I think it was 9 foot, 10 foot, that sort of size. And then they brought them out, and I don't think they realised how good it was. Everything was sold within, almost as soon as they came out.
Really?
Because it was mid-priced. I think they were like about
What,
170, 200 pounds.
what were they?
Like that.
Carbon fibre rods?
Carbon rods, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were so good, and they tried, and then everything went, and we contacted them, asked, have they got any more? And they said no, they've all sold out, but they've got a Mark II coming out. Not the rod, not the same rod.
Isn't it funny?
But that was a £300-400 rod.
Yeah.
And they marketed it wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it was well underpriced, but you can't get one now. It's a lovely rod.
Really?
Yeah. So would you say you're a salmon angler more than a trout?
Oh no.
Oh no?
No. I like to have the option to eat what I catch, and in the UK now, you know, rightly so, all salmon go back.
Yeah.
You know, and also the price of salmon fishing for what you get is, you know, that ratio it's completely out of kilter now, because you're still paying an awful lot of money to get a chance at a very few fish, which is a tragedy that the salmon rivers of Scotland are not fishing the way they used to, you know, 50 years ago or whatever. And I think what people don't, or the general public don't particularly pay any attention to, is the amount of money that a fly angler brings into a community if he's going fishing for salmon. You know, he stays in a hotel, he drinks in the bar, he eats in the restaurants, all that stuff, all that money coming up there, you know. And I don't know how you get around that, because for the same amount of money that I would fish, as I have done, the Tay or whatever, I can fly to Washington State and catch big steelhead in beautiful conditions, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a no-brainer really, but I don't know how you address that problem of the lack of salmon. Getting rid of all the salmon farms would be a start.
Before we started the podcast, you were saying you had a passion for cooking. So you cook your trout as well then, yeah?
Yeah. I smoke them. I've got a wee. It's not an Abu smoker, but it's one of these. You know, it's just a bit of the not petrol, but methylated spirits.
Yeah,
You know,
all
the
right,
wood,
yeah.
the wood chipping, the wood dust.
Yeah.
And just quickly smoke them. Yeah.
And you smoked pigs as well, yeah?
I
Bacon
do.
you did?
I do.
Yeah.
Aye. And it was very, very good as well.
Nice. That sounds lovely.
People listening to the podcast should try it. It's
Do you sell it?
no, maybe I should
You
have
should
done.
package it and sell it.
But
yeah.
everybody that tried it, you know that way when you cook bacon, you buy from the supermarket and all that white stuff comes
Oh,
out.
yeah.
You think, well, that it's things pumped full of water. With my bacon, nothing.
Really?
Oh,
Well, I've never known no different, because everything I've had is from the
Oh,
supermarket.
it's completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different. It's great.
One, you were saying that you smoke the trout. And I used to smoke trout myself. But something I did as well, because I do a little bit myself, is fly fishing for bass.
Uh-huh.
And then we tried this a few years ago. We wanted to catch a bass and cook it there and then.
Yeah.
It was a feature we did actually for trout fishermen many years ago now, 10 years probably. And then I caught this bass, nice bass, about 2.5 pound.
Uh-huh.
So we killed it, gutted it, and we had a disposable barbecue we did.
Yeah.
And then we put it on the barbecue and we ate it straight away within, 20 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And do you know what? It was one of the most disappointing fish.
No.
Yeah. I was told, I've spoken to a few people since, chefs, and I don't know how much truth is in this, perhaps you've got a different version of it. They say anything from the sea is always better the next day.
Really?
Yeah. And they said the flavour is better from the sea. So I've yet to eat bass. I've caught lots of bass since, but I don't eat them. But maybe this season, though, I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
Take one.
Yeah.
Try it the next day. Because it's classed as almost like a delicacy these days, bass. It's expensive to buy, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
But I suppose there's a bit of logic in that. Like, say, like last night I made a bolognese sauce, because I cook a lot, but it's always better the next day. Soup is always better the next day. So maybe there's a breakdown in the muscle fibre or
Yeah.
whatever, and it starts to slightly change. You know, like
Yeah.
like you hang a pheasant for a while or a grouse or whatever. You know, yeah. There may well be something in that.
Yeah, of course you shoot as well, you said.
I do, yeah. Shoot pheasant.
I went, never shot, but I was asked to photograph a shoot last month. It was a grouse shoot,
Oh wow! Yeah.
and I ended up photographing, I ended up,
Was this in Wales?
yeah, down in West Wales,
Uh-huh.
and I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, it was a whole new ball game for me, and I love photographing the dogs.
Oh yeah.
You know, getting them running towards you with the grouse in their mouth, and they're happy, they're bouncing.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, it's wonderful to see the dog. Stuart's got some. My pal Stuart's got about 6. I think he's got 2 springers, and the rest are ordinary spaniels. But my God, they're trained to within an inch of their
I don't
life.
think Duke will be going hunting, no?
He's a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and he's good for nothing except frightening neighbours.
He's been sitting next to me here now, and you haven't made any noise at all.
He's very laid back. Yeah.
When I spoke to you last week, you said you're going to, a woods nearby, you take him out for a walk, is it?
Yeah, just out the back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, some oak woods.
Would you say you prefer rivers to lakes, or
Yeah,
equally
very
as
much
it?
so.
Is it?
Yeah, I think, although I do fish, you know, up at Salford Lakes or whatever in the Cotswolds, I think there's something about the movement of water and the fly life on the water. There's a dynamic to it that makes it, you know, like, I know you can go around a lake and look for, you know, spots that you think are going to be productive, but there's just something about trying to read the water, seeing, you know, where the trout are going to be and getting your fly in there, you know.
Yeah. Moving on now to your new venture. You have a new story to tell yourself, haven't you? And that was in the form of your own whiskey.
Yeah.
Was it launched last year, was it?
Yeah, it took us 3 years to get it to market, if you like. And the backstory, sort of briefly, is that I was in a film called The Outlaw King, and the film company had thought that they might bring out their own Outlaw King whiskey that was going to be made by Annandale Distillery in the Borders, very near the Annan River and the Nith.
Yeah.
Yeah, great grayling
river,
river,
the Nith,
great
isn't it?
grayling river, and salmon and trout. And I'll be up there this year. That didn't come to fruition, but they'd asked me to go up and meet the people at the distillery to promote this idea. So I'd met David Thompson, Professor David Thompson, that owns the distillery. It had been out of commission for about 70 years, and he's got a lot of businesses, and he spent about 5-6 million quid doing up this.
Wow.
I would call it a boutique distillery. You know, it's not huge, it's not tiny, but it's not a huge commercial thing. But I spoke to my business partner Andy Pancioli, and you know, because when you finish films or you meet people, I said to Andy, it'd be nice if we had a whiskey that we could give them, you know, like, you know, just a thank you. Anyway, Andy phoned Annandale up, and they after lots of discussions, he said, we think this is going to be much bigger than just a few dozen bottles from James. And that started the process, and I worked with Keith Law, who was a master blender,
I saw the video, yeah.
and the design company, the market research company, the design of the bottle, the design of the label. God, it went on forever. And then the tasting of the whiskey, finding it, because I wanted it to be my whiskey, you know, something that I really liked. So that took it. That sounds like hard work, doesn't it? Tasting whiskey, but we eventually sort of got it down to five or six whiskies, slightly different to each other, and I had to choose the one. And I'm glad that I chose that one, because it's doing incredibly well. I mean, it's won so many blind tastings against whiskies that cost 3 times as much. We knock them out the park, and it's going to be announced at the end of this month that it's won a big whisky prize.
The
So
name is fantastic.
well, that was the market research company that came up with that.
Storyman.
But yeah, because it is the sort of whiskey that you would sit down in front of the fire and, you know, pour a dram and, you know, like chat.
I was reading up the history of Annandale, the distillery,
Yeah.
online. And is it right? It's actually on the land of Robert de Bruce.
Yes, that's right, because they make a whiskey called Man of Sword, which is dedicated to Robert Bruce, and they make another whiskey called Man of Words, which is dedicated to Robert Burns.
Wow.
Yeah, but Bruce owned land. Well, he owned land up north of Scotland and down in the borders. You know.
I watched the video clip of you picking
Uh-huh.
which one.
Did
as
you?
well,
Yeah.
And you could tell you were in the middle, and there was these two guys then. At the
Yeah,
side.
that was
And you
David
could-
and Keith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keith was the blender, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And then David, you could tell he was very nervous.
Yes.
He wanted to make sure he had something which you liked.
Yes.
And you kept it till the end, didn't you? You didn't say an awful lot throughout it. And then, what was good? I think David asked, "What are you looking for in it?"
Mm-hmm.
And you said, "Obviously, you're not a master blender like Keith, but it's got to say something to you." You know. And I thought that was good. And I'm not a whiskey drinker over the years. I've had them. It's never really appealed to me, purely because I loved the idea. I wanted to love whiskey, got the image
Yeah.
of whiskey, you know. But over the years, my sister, she loves whiskey. And she always has the expensive ones, actually. I've known my sister. Every so often, try this. And they're okay.
Yeah.
And then when I got the opportunity, when I spoke to you, I thought, I got to get a bottle. So I ordered a bottle myself. And there's not a great deal left in it now. But I got to be honest, it's what it says to me, there's a warm feel to it. It's much softer than any other whiskey I've had.
Yeah.
There's not that kick,
No,
which you get in
no.
a whiskey. And it's almost like a recognisable something, a knowing. And it's a comforting feeling, drinking it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Oh, I'm
and it
glad to hear
leaves a
that.
silky taste in the mouth.
It does, doesn't it, Kerry?
After-
There's no bubbling
No.
afterwards. No.
No. So then,
I'm very pleased. That's great.
yeah, so there'll be a couple of orders going through now. I know what to buy my sister for Christmas. And fun enough, I took it down to see her last week. And her partner's Scottish. He's from Galashiels.
Oh yeah.
And he hadn't touched the whiskey for 40 years, he said. And he tried some. And he tried some more. And he tried some more. So he likes it now as well.
Ah,
so
great.
It's gone down well. You must be really pleased with it.
I'm delighted. I'm very, very happy for Keith and the rest of the team up there. That they did work ever so hard, and it means an awful lot to them.
And is it-
that the brand is
Yeah.
successful?
And the whole history of the place itself adds to selling it. And the name, everything is like packaged nice as well, isn't it?
And you know, when David Thompson took the place over, the water source had either degraded or whatever, and they needed water, you know, like the best quality water. So David called in a hydrology company, and they turned up in their van with all the equipment and things, you see. And they said this guy got out and said, "Well, we can do all the hydrology tests and things, and we'll find the water for you, hopefully." He said, or you could do it a bit quicker. And David said, "How's that?" He said, "Old Davy in the van." And he went, "What do you mean?" He said, he'll find the water for you." So David said, "I carry on, you know." So this old guy comes out. David said it was like 2 pieces of a wire coat hanger he had. And he gets out and he wanders up and down round the grounds of the place. And then he stuck his heel in the ground and he said 60 feet. He said, "Pure spring water, 60 feet. David said they drilled down 50 feet, nothing. 60 feet, bang. Pure spring water. That's where it comes from.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
What a divining.
Yeah.
That's
And
good
seemingly this guy is employed by BP and all these big companies. He can do it.
Well, we go back to the fishing now.
Uh-huh.
Have you got any goals for this year?
Yeah, I want to, because I love cooking, but I'm not a big fan of eating trout. I do eat it, but not that often. I like it as you are the same. I like it hot smoked, and that's the only way I like it, really. So I'm going to do, like, when I come down to Wales, I'm going to purchase a spinning rod for mackerel and bass. Try and catch my own fish. Just cook it on the shore, not leave it overnight or whatever. But because I remember I used to go up fishing in Inveraray for the rivers round there for trout, and then on the way back, me and Eddie would stop at Lough Long and in the summer and just cast out a wee silver thing and catch a couple of mackerel, gut them, wrap them in silver foil, and throw them in the campfire for 10 minutes or so. Then a wee bit of salt or whatever, and we'd have that. That's what it's that whole, catch, eat, the whole thing, prepare it all, then eat it.
Yeah.
I find
it's a full circle then, isn't it?
It's a full circle, yeah.
That's what I do love about going to Ireland, on the boat, on the Corrib. Have you been to the Corrib?
No, I never have, no.
Oh, right. And it's basically, it's like 33 mile long, 8 mile wide.
That's not in County Mayo, is it? No.
Well, actually, it's County Galway, but part of it is...
Because Galway's not very far away from Achill, is it? It's only about an hour or something.
No, that's right, yeah. It's kind of on the border. Most of it is in Galway, it is. And Loch Mass next to it is in Mayo. But what I enjoy about it is the fishing, obviously, is great. And you've got these islands all over the place. Yeah. It's an absolute dream location. And if I hadn't discovered that, I'd be a rich man. Because all my money is going over there, it's travelling, whenever I can.
Really?
It's a second home, yeah.
Do you have a home there?
No. I was with a girl for 2 years there. And in fact, in Westport, I was with some...
Right, yeah.
And then every morning, open the window, and you could see Clare Island.
Yeah.
Which isn't too far away from there.
Yeah.
But I find it's going out in the lake, and then you'll meet others for lunch on the island. So we all just motor off, do a bit of fishing, and then we meet at lunchtime, maybe 12, 1 o'clock, on the island, make a fire, get the pans out. Usually it's steak or some chicken. Yeah. But now and again, we'll kill a trout. Yeah. I don't kill hardly anything these days. But at least once a year, it's something nice to do, to have like 2 trout on the pan, put a pound and a half, something like that. Yeah. And but I know what you mean. In the outdoors, cooking it, and everything tastes better. It does, doesn't it? I don't know if it's a psychological thing or what. Yeah. And it doesn't matter so much if you catch. I've never been to a place where just being there, people say, oh, I just like being there. But deep down, everyone wants to catch a fish. But honestly, the Corrib, for me, I enjoy it so much, just being there. Oh, I must try it sometime. Yeah. Must do. Yeah. Because I need to get over to Achill again, because I left there and I was really sort of sad that I was leaving, and the people, they wanted me to come back, and, I'm going to go back and say hi to some folk, Yeah. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed our chat. We could probably chat for ages. But James, there's one more question I ask everyone at the end of the podcast. Where would you want to be to make your last cast? I think maybe the River Fillan, up by Crearlarich, because that's where I started to learn how to fly fish properly by trial and error. And it was a lovely wee river, and you'd never see anyone all day, and it was beautiful and it was clean, and it was just delightful. Happy days, yeah. Many thanks, James. My pleasure, Ceri. If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to listen to more, please consider becoming a patron, where you'll get weekly podcasts and access to for over 140 episodes, behind the scenes photography to go with each episode, plus other exclusive content and prizes. To become a Patreon, visit patreon.com/casting with Ceri Jones, or you can find the link on my website castingwithcerijones.com. That's all for now, and tight lines, and may they always be up in the wave.